10th Insight by James Redfield. Chapter 8. Forgiving. As my head cleared, I gradually became aware of something cold and wet against my right cheek. Slowly, I opened my eyes, the rest of my body frozen in place. For a moment, the half-grown wolf looked at me and sniffed hard, his tail bristling. Then he dashed into the woods as I jerked back and sat up. In a tired stupor, I retrieved my pack in the fading light and walked into the thick trees, and raised my tent, afterward virtually collapsing into the sleeping bag. I struggled to stay awake, intrigued by my strange meeting with Charlene. Why had she been in the other dimension? What had drawn us together? The next morning I woke early and made oatmeal, wolfing it down, and then made my way carefully back to the small creek I had passed on my way up the ridge to wash my face and fill my canteen. I still felt tired, but I was also anxious to find Curtis. Suddenly I was jolted to my feet by the sound of an explosion toward the east. That had to be Curtis, I thought, as I ran to the tent. A wave of fear passed through me as I quickly packed and headed toward the sound of the blast. After about a half-mile, the woods ended abruptly at what appeared to be an abandoned pasture. Several strands of rusty barbed wire hung loosely between the trees in my path. I surveyed the open field and the line of trees and dense bush 100 yards beyond. At that moment the bushes parted and Curtis burst through and headed in a dead run straight toward me. I waved and he immediately recognized who I was, and slowed to a fast walk. When he reached me, he carefully climbed through the barbed wire and collapsed against a tree, breathing rapidly. "What happened?" I asked. "What did you blow up?" He shook his head. "I couldn't do much. They're running the experiment underground. I didn't have enough explosives and I didn't want to hurt the people inside. All I could do was blow up an outside dish antenna, which hopefully will delay them." "How did you get close enough to do that?" "I set the charges last night after dark. They must not expect anyone to be up here, because they have very few guards outside." He paused for a moment as we heard the sound of trucks in the distance. "We'll have to get out of this valley," he continued, "and find some help. We don't have any choice now. They'll be coming." "Wait a minute," I said. "I think we have a chance to stop them, but we've got to find Maya and Charlene." His eyes widened. "Are you talking about Charlene Billings?" "That's right. I know her. She used to do some contract research for the corporation. I hadn't seen her for years, but I saw her last night going into the underground bunker. She was walking with several men, all of them heavily armed. Were they holding her against her will? I couldn't tell," Curtis said distractedly, his ears tuned to the trucks, which now seemed to be heading in our direction. "We've got to get out of here. I know a place where we can hide until dark, but we'll have to hurry." He looked back toward the east. "I set a false trail, but it won't sidetrack them for long. I've got to tell you what happened," I said. "I found Will again." "Right, tell me on the way," he said, walking quickly. "We've got to move." I looked out of the mouth of the cave and across the deep gorge to the opposite hillside. No movement. I listened carefully but could hear nothing. We had walked in a northeasterly direction for about a mile, and as quickly as I could, I had told Curtis what I had experienced in the other dimension, stressing my belief that Williams had been correct. We could stop this. Experiment if we could find the rest of the group and remember the larger vision. I could tell that Curtis was resisting. He had listened for a while, but then began rambling about his past association with Charlene. I was frustrated that he knew nothing that might explain what she had to do with this experiment. He also told me how he had come to know David. They had become friends, he explained, after a chance meeting had revealed many common experiences in the military. I told him it was significant that he and I both had an association with David, and that we knew Charlene. I don't know what it means, he had said distractedly, and I had dropped it, but I knew it was further proof that we had all come to this valley for a reason. Afterward, we had walked in silence as Curtis searched for the cave. When we had found it, he backtracked and erased our tracks with dead pine branches, and then had lingered outside until he was convinced we hadn't been seen. "This soup is ready," Curtis said from behind me. I had used my camp stove and water to cook the last of my freeze-dried food. Walking over, I made us both a bowl, and then sat down again at the mouth of the cave, looking out. "So how do you think this group can build enough energy to have an effect on these people?" he asked. "I'm not sure exactly," I replied. "We'll have to figure it out." He shook his head. "I don't think anything like that is possible. Probably all I did with my little bit of explosives was to irritate them and put them more on guard. They'll bring more people in, but I don't think they will stop. They would have had a replacement antenna close by. Maybe I should have taken out the door. God knows I could have. But I just couldn't bring myself to do that. Charlene was inside, and who knows how many others. I would have had to shorten the timer, so they would have gotten me. But maybe it would have been worth it." "No, I don't think so," I said. "We're going to find the other way. How? It'll come to us?" We heard the faint sound of the vehicles again, and simultaneously I noticed a movement on the downslope below us. "Someone's out there," I said. We crouched down and looked closely. The figure moved again, partially obscured by the underbrush. "That's Maya," I said, disbelieving. Curtis and I stared at each other for a long moment, then I moved to get up. "I'll go get her," I said. He grabbed my arm. "Stay low, and if the vehicles close in, leave her and come back here. Don't risk being seen." I nodded and ran carefully down the hill. When I was close enough, I stopped and listened. The trucks were still moving closer. I called out to her in a low voice. She froze for an instant, then recognized me and climbed up a rocky slope to where I stood. "I can't believe I found you," she said, hugging my neck. I led the way back to the cave and helped her through the opening in the rock. She appeared exhausted and her arms were covered with scratches, some of them still bleeding. "What happened?" she asked. I heard an explosion, and then those trucks were everywhere. "Did anyone see you come this way?" Curtis asked with irritation. He was up and looking outside. "I don't think so," she said. "I was able to hide. I quickly introduced them." Curtis nodded and said, "I think I'll take a look." He slipped out through the opening and disappeared. I opened my pack and took out a first aid kit. "Were you able to find your friend with the sheriff's department?" "No, I couldn't even get back to town. There were Forest Service agents along all the paths back. I saw a woman I knew and gave her a note to take to him. That's all I could do." I applied some antiseptic to a long gash across Maya's knee. "So why didn't you leave with the woman you saw? Why did you change your mind and come back out here?" She took the antiseptic and silently began applying it herself. Finally she spoke. "I don't know why I came back. Maybe because I kept having these memories." She looked up at me. "I want to understand what's happening here." Sat down facing her and gave her a sketchy summary of everything that had happened since we parted, particularly the information Will and I had received about the group process of moving past the resentment to find the world vision. She looked overwhelmed, but seemed to accept her role. "I noticed your ankle no longer seems to be bothering you." "Yeah. I guess it cleared up when I remembered where the problem came from." She stared at me for a moment, then said, "There are only 3 of us. You said Williams and Feynman had both seen 7. I don't know," I replied. "I'm just glad you're here. You're the one who knows about faith and visualization." A look of terror crossed her face. A few moments later, Curtis came back through the opening and told us he had seen nothing out of the ordinary, then sat down away from us to finish his meal. I reached over and served another plate and gave it to Maya. Curtis leaned back and handed her a canteen. "You know," he said, "you took a hell of a risk walking around in the open like that. You could have led them right to us." Maya glanced at me and then said defensively, "I was trying to get away. I didn't know you were up here. I wouldn't even have come this way if the birds hadn't." "Well, you've got to understand how much trouble we're in," Curtis interrupted. "We still haven't stopped this experiment." He got up and stepped outside again and sat behind a large rock near the opening. "Why is he so mad at me?" Maya asked. "You said you were having memories, Maya. What kind? I don't know, of another time, I guess, of trying to stop some other violence. That's why all this is so eerie to me." "Does Curtis seem familiar to you?" She struggled to think. "Maybe. I don't know." "Why? Do you remember when I told you about seeing a vision of all of us in the past, during the Native American wars? Well, you were killed, and someone else was with you who seemed to be following your lead. And he was killed too. I think it was Curtis. He blames me. Oh God, no wonder he's so mad. Maya, can you remember anything about what you two were doing?" She closed her eyes and tried to think. Suddenly she looked at me. Was a Native American also there? A shaman? "Yes," I said. "He was killed too. We were thinking about something." She looked me in the eye. "No, we were visualizing. We thought we could stop the war. That's all I can get. You've got to talk to Curtis and help him work through his anger. It's part of the process of remembering." "Are you kidding? With him this angry?" "I'll go speak with him first," I said, standing up. She nodded slightly and looked away. I moved to the cave's opening, crawled out, and sat down beside Curtis. "What do you think?" I asked. He looked at me, slightly embarrassed. "I think there's something about your friend that makes me mad." "What are you feeling exactly?" "I don't know. I felt angry as soon as I saw her out there. I got the sense she might pull some blunder and expose us, or get us captured. Yeah, maybe killed." The force in his voice surprised both of us, and he took a breath and shrugged. "Remember when I told you about the visions I saw, of a time during the 19th century Native American wars?" "Vaguely," he muttered. "Well, I didn't tell you then, but I think I saw you and Maya together. Curtis, you were both killed by soldiers." He looked at the ceiling of the cave. "And you think that's why I'm angry at her?" I smiled. At that moment, a light dissonance filled the air, and we both heard the hum. "Damn," he said. "They're firing it up again." I grabbed his arm. "Curtis, we've got to figure out what you and Maya were trying to do back then, why you failed, and what you intended to happen differently this time." He shook his head. "Don't know how much of all this I even believe. I wouldn't know where to begin. I think if you just talk with her, something will come up." He just looked at me. "Will you try?" Finally he nodded, and we crawled back into the cave. Maya smiled awkwardly. "I'm sorry I've been so angry," Curtis offered. "It seems maybe I'm mad about something that occurred a long time ago." "Forget it," she said. "I just wish we could remember what we were trying to do." Curtis looked hard at Maya. I seem to remember you're into healing of some kind. He glanced at me. Did you tell me that? I don't think so, I replied. But it's true. I'm a physician, Maya said. I use positive imaging and faith in my work. Faith? You mean you treat people from a religious perspective? Well, only in a general sense. When I said faith, I meant the energy force that comes from human expectation. I work at a clinic where we're trying to understand faith as an actual mental process, as the way we help create the future. And how long have you been into all this? Curtis asked. My whole life has prepared me to explore healing. She went on to tell Curtis the same story of her life that she had told me earlier, including her mother's tendency to worry that she would get cancer. As Maya discussed all that had happened to her, both Curtis and I asked questions. As we listened and gave her energy, the fatigue that had shown on her face began to ease, her eyes brightened, and she began to sit up straight. Curtis asked, You believe your mother's worry and negative vision of her future affected her health? Yes. Humans seem to help draw into their lives two particular kinds of events, what we have faith in and what we fear. But we're doing it, unconsciously. As a physician, I believe much can be gained by pulling the process fully into consciousness. Curtis nodded. But how is that done? Maya didn't answer. She stood up and stared straight ahead, a panicked look on her face. What's wrong? I asked. I see what happened during the wars. What was it? Curtis asked. She looked at him. I remember we were there in the woods. I can see it all. The soldiers, smoke from the gunpowder. Curtis seemed to be pulled into deep thought, obviously picking up on the memory. I was there, he mumbled. Why was I there? He looked at Maya. You brought me to that place. I knew nothing. I was just a congressional observer. You told me we could stop the fighting. She turned away, obviously struggling to understand. I thought we could. There's a way. Wait a minute, we weren't alone. She turned and stared at me, an angry expression appearing on her face. You were there too, but you abandoned us. Why did you leave us? Her statement stirred the memory I had brought back earlier and told them both what I had seen, describing the others who were also there, the elders of several tribes, myself, Charlene. I explained that one elder voiced strong support of Maya's efforts, but believed the time was not right, arguing that the tribes had not yet found their correct vision. I told them another chief had exploded with rage at the atrocities perpetrated by the white soldiers. I couldn't stay, I told them, describing my memory of the experience with the Franciscans. I couldn't shake the need to run. I had to save myself. I'm sorry. Maya seemed lost in thought, so I touched her arm and said, The elders knew it couldn't work, and Charlene confirmed that we hadn't yet remembered the ancestors' wisdom. Then why did one of the chiefs stay with us? She asked. Because he didn't want the two of you to die alone. I didn't want to die at all, Curtis snapped, looking at Maya. You misled me. I'm sorry, she said. I can't remember what went wrong. I know what went wrong, he said. You thought you could stop a war just because you wanted to. She gazed at him for a long moment, then looked at me. He's right. We were visualizing that the soldiers must stop their aggression, but we had no clear picture of how that could happen. It didn't work because we didn't have all the information. Everyone was visualizing from fear, not faith. It works just like the process of healing our bodies. When we remember what we're really supposed to do in life, it can restore our health. When we're able to remember what all of humanity is supposed to do, starting right now, from this moment, we can heal the world. Apparently, I said, our birth vision contains not only what we individually intended to do in the physical dimension, but also a larger vision of what humans have been trying to do throughout history, and the details of where we are going from here and how to get there. We just have to amplify our energy and share our birth intentions. And then we can remember. Before she could respond, Curtis jumped to his feet and moved to the cave's opening. I heard something, he said. Someone's out there. Maya and I crouched beside him, straining to see. Nothing moved. Then I thought I detected the rustling sound of someone walking. I'm going to check this out, Curtis said, moving through the opening. I glanced at Maya. I'd better go with him. I'm coming too, she said. We followed Curtis down the slope to an outcropping, where we could look straight down at the gorge between the two hills. A man and a woman, partially obscured by the underbrush, were crossing the rocks below us, heading toward the west. That woman's in trouble, Maya said. How do you know that? I asked. I just know. She looks familiar. The woman turned once, and the man pushed her menacingly, exposing a pistol held in his right hand. Maya leaned forward, looking at both of us. Did you see that? We've got to do something. I looked closely. The woman had light hair and was dressed in a sweatshirt and green fatigues with leg pockets. As I watched, she turned and said something to her captor, then glanced toward us, giving me a clear look at her face. That's Charlene, I said. Where do you think he's taking her? Who knows? Curtis replied. Look, I think I can help her, but I have to go alone. I need both of you to stay here, I protested, but Curtis would have it no other way. We watched him as he walked back to the left and down the slope through a section of woods. From there, he crept quietly to another outcropping of rock just 10 feet above the bottom of the gorge. They'll have to pass right by him, I told Maya. We observed anxiously as they moved closer to the rocks. At the precise moment they had passed, Curtis bounded down the hill and leaped upon the man, knocking him to the ground and holding his throat in a peculiar fashion until he stopped moving. Charlene jumped back in alarm and gathered herself to run. Charlene, wait, Curtis called. She stopped and took a cautious step forward. It's Curtis Weber. We worked together at Deltec, remember? I'm here to help you. She obviously recognized him and moved closer. Maya and I made our way carefully down the hill. When Charlene saw me, she froze and then ran toward my embrace. Curtis rushed up and pushed us to the ground. Keep down, he said. We could be seen here. I helped Curtis tie up Charlene's guard with a roll of tape we found in his pocket and pulled him up the slope into the forest. What did you do to him? Charlene asked. Curtis was checking his pockets. I just knocked him out. He'll be okay. Maya bent down to check his pulse. Charlene turned her attention to me, reaching out for my hand. How did you get here? She asked. Taking a breath, I told her about the call from her office informing me of her disappearance and about finding the sketch and coming to the valley to look for her. She smiled. I made that sketch intending to call you, but I left so suddenly I didn't have time. Her voice trailed off as she looked deeply into my eyes. I think I saw you yesterday. In the other dimension. I pulled her to the side, away from the others. I saw you too, but I couldn't communicate. As we stared at each other, I felt my body grow lighter, a wave of orgasmic love sweeping across me. centered not in my pelvic region, but somehow around the outside of my skin. Simultaneously, I seemed to be falling into Charlene's eyes. Her smile grew, and I realized she must be feeling much the same way. A movement from Curtis broke the spell, and I realized both he and Maya were staring at us. I looked back at Charlene. "I want to tell you what's been happening," I said, then described seeing Will again, learning about the polarization of fear, and the group coming back, and the world vision. "Charlene, how did you get into the afterlife dimension?" Her face fell. "All this is my fault. I didn't know the danger until yesterday. I'm the one who told Feynman about the insights. Shortly after receiving your letter, I found out about another group that knew of the 9 insights, and I studied with them intensely. I had many of the same experiences you talked about. Later, I came with a friend to this valley because we had heard that the sacred locations here were connected somehow with the 10th insight. My friend didn't experience much, but I did, so I stayed to explore. That's when I met Feynman, who employed me to teach him what I knew. From that moment forward, he was with me every minute. He insisted I not call my office, for security reasons, so I wrote letters rescheduling all my appointments, only, as it turned out, I guess he was intercepting my letters. That's why everyone thought I was missing. With Feynman, I explored most of the vortexes, especially the ones at Cotter's Knoll and the Falls. He couldn't sense the energy, personally, but I found out later that he was tracking us electronically and getting some sort of energy profile on me as we tuned into the locations. After that, he could hone in on the area and find the exact location of the vortex electronically. I glanced at Curtis, and he nodded knowingly. Tears filled Charlene's eyes. He had me completely fooled. He said that he was working on a very inexpensive source of energy that will liberate everyone. He sent me to remote areas of the forest during much of the experimentation. Only later, after I confronted him, did he admit the dangers of what he was doing. Curtis turned to face Charlene. Feynman Carter was a chief engineer at Deltec. "Do you remember?" "No," she said, "but he's totally in control of this project. Another corporation is now involved, and they have these armed men. Feynman calls them operatives. I finally told him I was leaving, and that's when he put me under guard. When I told him he would never get away with this, he just laughed. He bragged about having someone in the Forest Service working with him." "Where was he sending you?" Curtis asked. Charlene shook her head. "I have no idea. I don't think he intended to let you live," Curtis said. "Not after telling you all that." An anxious silence fell over the group. "What I can't understand," Charlene said, "is why he's here in this forest in the first place. What does he want with these energy locations?" Curtis and I met eyes again. Then he said, "He's experimenting with a way of centralizing this energy source he's found by focusing on the dimensional pathways in this valley. That's why it's so dangerous." I became aware that Charlene was staring at Maya and smiling. Maya returned the gaze with a warm expression. "When I was at the falls," Charlene said, "I moved through into the other dimension, and all these memories rushed in." She looked at me. After that, I was able to go back several times, even when I was under guard yesterday. She looked at me again. "That's where I saw you." Charlene paused and looked back at the group. "I saw that we're all here to stop this experiment, if we can remember everything." Maya was watching her closely. "You understood what we wanted to do during the battle with the soldiers and supported us," she said, "even though you knew it couldn't work." Charlene's smile told me she had remembered. "We've remembered most of what happened," I said, "but so far we haven't been able to recall how we plan to do it differently this time. Can you remember?" Charlene shook her head. "Only parts of it. I know we have to identify our unconscious feelings toward one another before we can go on." She looked into my eyes and paused. "This is all part of the 10th insight, only it hasn't been written down anywhere yet. It's coming in intuitively. I nodded. We know. Part of the 10th is an extension of the 8th. Only a group that's operating fully in the 8th insight can accomplish this kind of higher clearing. I'm not following you, Curtis said. The 8th is about knowing how to uplift others, she continued, knowing how to send energy by focusing on another's beauty and higher self-wisdom. This process can raise the energy level and creativity of the group exponentially. Unfortunately, many groups have trouble uplifting each other in this manner, even though the individuals involved are able to do it at other times. This is especially true if the group is work-oriented, a group of employees, for instance, or people coming together to create a unique project of some kind, because so often these people have been together before, and old, past life emotions come up and get in the way. We are thrown together with someone we have to work with, and we automatically dislike them, without really knowing why. Or perhaps we experience it the other way around. The person doesn't like us, again for reasons we don't understand. The emotions that come up might be jealousy, irritation, envy, resentment, bitterness, blame. Any of these. What I intuited very clearly was that no group could reach its highest potential unless the participants seek to understand and work through these emotions. Maya leaned forward. That's exactly what we've been doing. Working through the emotions that have come up. The resentments from when we were together before. Were you shown your birth vision? I asked. Yes, Charlene replied. But I couldn't get any further. I didn't have enough energy. All I saw was that groups were forming, and that I was supposed to be here in this valley, in a group of 7. Presently, the sound of another vehicle far to the north attracted our attention. We can't stay here, Curtis said. We're too exposed. Let's go back to the cave. Charlene finished the last of the food and handed me the plate. Having no extra water, I placed it in my pack dirty and sat down again. Curtis slipped through the mouth of the cave and sat down across from me beside Maya, who smiled faintly at him. Charlene sat to my left. The operative had been left outside the cave, still bound and gagged. Is everything okay outside? Charlene asked Curtis. Curtis looked nervous. I think so, but I heard some more sounds to the north. I think we need to stay in here until dark. For a moment we all just looked at each other, each of us obviously trying to raise our energy. I looked at the others and told them about the process of reaching the world vision I had seen with Feynman's soul group. When I had concluded, I looked at Charlene and asked, "What else did you receive about this clearing process?" "All I got," Charlene replied, "was that the process couldn't begin until we come totally back to love." That's easy to say, Curtis said. The problem is doing it. We all looked at each other again, then simultaneously realized the energy was moving to Maya. The key is to acknowledge the emotion, to become fully conscious of the feeling, and then to share it honestly, no matter how awkward our attempts. This brings the emotion fully into present awareness, and ultimately allows it to be relegated to the past where it belongs. That's why going through the sometimes long process of saying it, discussing it, putting it on the table, clears us, so that we're able to return to a state of love, which is the highest emotion. Wait a minute, I said. What about Charlene? There may be residual emotions toward her. Looked at Maya. Oh, you felt something. Yes, Maya replied. But only positive feelings, a sense of gratitude. She stayed and tried to help. Maya paused, studying Charlene's face. You tried to tell us something about the ancestors. But we didn't listen. I leaned toward Charlene. Were you killed too? Maya answered for her. No, she wasn't killed. She had gone to try to appeal to the soldiers one more time. That's right, Charlene said. But they were gone. Maya asked. Who else feels something toward Charlene? I don't feel anything, Curtis said. What about you, Charlene? I asked. What do you feel toward us? Her gaze swept across each member of the group. There don't seem to be any residual feelings toward Curtis, she said. And everything is positive toward Maya. Her eyes settled on mine. Toward you, I think I feel a bit of resentment. Why? I asked. Because you were so practical and detached. You were this independent man who wasn't about to get involved if the timing wasn't perfect. Charlene, I said. I'd already sacrificed myself for these insights as a monk. I felt it would have been useless. Maya reached over and touched me. Your comment was defensive. When you respond that way, the other person doesn't feel heard. The emotion she harbors then lingers in her mind because she continues to think of ways to make you understand, to convince you. Or it goes unconscious, and then there's ill feeling that dulls the energy between you two. Either way, the emotion remains a problem, getting in the way. I suggest you acknowledge how she could be feeling, that looked at Charlene. Oh, I do. I wish that I had helped. Maybe I could have done something, if I had the courage. Charlene nodded and smiled. How about you? Maya asked, looking at me. What do you feel toward Charlene? I guess I feel some guilt, I said. Not so much guilt about the war, but about now, this situation. I'd been withdrawn for several months. I think if I had talked to you immediately after returning from Peru, maybe we could have stopped the experiment earlier, and none of this would be happening. No one replied. Are there any other feelings? Maya asked. We only looked at each other. At this point, under Maya's direction, each of us focused on connecting inside with building as much energy as we could. As I focused on the beauty around me, a wave of love swept through my body. The muted color of the cave walls and floor began to brighten and glow. Each person's face began to appear more energized. A chill ran up my spine. Now, Maya said, we're ready to figure out what we intended to do this time. She again appeared to be in deep thought. I knew this was going to happen, she said finally. This was part of my birth vision. I was to lead the amplification process. We didn't know how to do this when we tried to stop the war on the Native Americans. As she spoke, I noticed a movement behind her against the cave wall. At first I thought it was a reflection of light, but then I detected a deep shade of green exactly like the one I witnessed earlier when observing Maya's soul group. As I struggled to focus on the foot-square blob of light, it swelled into a full holographic scene, receding into the wall itself, full of fuzzy human-like forms. I glanced at the others. No one seemed to see the image except me. This, I knew, was Maya's soul group, and as soon as I had this realization, I began to receive an inflow of intuitive information. I could see her birth vision again, her higher intention of being born to her particular family, her mother's illness, the resulting interest in medicine, particularly the mind-body connection, and now this gathering. I clearly heard that no group can reach its full creative power until it consciously clears and then amplifies its energy. Once free of the emotions, Maya was now saying, a group can more easily move past power struggles and dramas and find its full creativity. But we have to do it consciously, by finding a higher self-expression in every face. Curtis's blank look provoked more explanation. As the eighth insight reveals, Maya continued, if we look closely at another person's face, we can cut through any facades or ego defenses that may be present and find the individual's authentic expression, his or her real self. Ordinarily, most people don't know what to focus on when talking to another. Should it be the eyes? It's hard to focus on both. So which one? Or should it be on the feature that most stands out, such as the nose or mouth? In truth, we are called upon to focus on the whole of the face, which with its uniqueness of light and shadow and alignment of features is much like an inkblot. But within this collection of features, one can find an authentic expression, the soul shining forth. When we focus in love, love energy is sent to this higher self aspect of the person, and the person will seem to change before our eyes as his or her greater capabilities shift into place. All great teachers have always sent this kind of energy toward their students. That's why they were great teachers. But the effect is even greater with groups who interact this way with every member, because as each person sends the other's energy, all of the members rise to a new level of wisdom which has more energy at its disposal. And this greater energy is then sent back to everyone else in what becomes an amplification effect. I watched Maya, attempting to find her higher expression. No longer did she appear tired or reluctant in any way. Instead, her features revealed a certainty and genius she had not expressed before. I glanced toward the others and saw that they were similarly focused on Maya. When I looked at her again, I noticed that she seemed to be taking on the green hue of her soul group. She was not only picking up on their knowledge, she seemed to be moving into a kind of harmony with them. Maya had stopped speaking and was taking a deep breath. I could feel the energy shifting away from her. I've always known that groups could acquire a higher level of functioning, Curtis said, especially in work settings. But I haven't been able to experience this until now. I know I came into this dimension to be involved in transforming business and shifting our view of business creativity so that we can ultimately utilize the new energy sources in the correct way and implement the 9th insight automation of production. He paused in thought, then said, business is too often labeled as the greedy villain, out of control with no conscience. And I guess it's been exactly that in the past. But I felt as though business, too, was moving into a spiritual awareness, and that we needed a new kind of business ethic. At that moment, I saw another movement of light, directly behind Curtis. I watched for a few seconds, then realized I was seeing the formation of his soul group as well. As with Maya's group, when I focused on the emerging image, I was again able to pick up on their collective knowledge. Curtis was born in the peak of the Industrial Revolution occurring just after World War II. Nuclear power had been the final triumph and shocking horror of the materialist worldview, and he had entered with a vision that technological advancement could now be made conscious and moved, in full awareness, toward its destined purpose. Only now, Curtis said, are we ready to understand how to evolve business and the resulting new technology in a conscious manner? All the measures are now in place. It's not an accident that one of the most important statistical categories in economics is the productivity index, the record of how many goods and services are produced by each individual in our society. Productivity has steadily increased because of technological discoveries and the more expansive use of natural resources and energy. Through the years, the individual has found ever greater ways to create. As he spoke, a thought came to me. At first, I decided to keep it to myself, but then everyone looked my way. Doesn't the environmental damage that economic growth is causing form a natural limit to business? We can't go on like we have, because if we do, the environment will literally fall apart. Many of the fish in the ocean are already so polluted we can't eat them. Cancer rates are increasing exponentially. Even the AMA says that pregnant women and children should not eat commercial vegetables because of the pesticide residue. If this keeps up, can you imagine what kind of world we'll be leaving our children? As soon as I had said this, I recalled what Joel had said earlier about the collapse of the environment. I could feel my energy falling as I felt the same fear. Suddenly, I was hit with a burst of energy, as each of the others stared in an effort to find my authentic expression again. I quickly re-established my inner connection. "You're right," Curtis said, "but our response to this problem is already occurring. We've been advancing technology with a kind of unconscious tunnel vision, forgetting that we're here on an organic planet, an energy planet. But one of the most creative areas of business is the field of pollution control. Our problem has been trying to depend on government to police the polluters. Polluting has been against the law for a long time, but there will never be enough government regulation to prevent the illegal dumping of waste chemicals or the midnight venting of smokestacks. This polluting of the biosphere won't completely stop until an alarmed citizenry pulls out their video recorders and takes it upon themselves to catch these people in the act. In a sense, business and the employees of business must regulate themselves." Maya leaned forward. "I see another problem with the way the economy is evolving. What about all the displaced workers who are losing their jobs as more of the economy is automated? How can they survive? We used to have a large middle class, and now it is diminishing rapidly." Curtis smiled and his eyes brightened. The image of his soul group swelled behind him. "These displaced people will survive by learning to live intuitively and synchronistically," he said. "We all have to understand there's no going back. We're already living in the information age. Everyone will have to educate themselves the best they can, become an expert in some niche, so that they can be in the right place to advise someone else or perform some other service. The more technical the automation becomes, and the more quickly the world changes, the more we need information from just the right person arriving in our lives at just the right time. You don't need a formal education to do that, just a niche you've created for yourself through self-education. Yet, for this flow to be optimally established across the economy, the stated purposes of business must shift into higher awareness. Our guiding intuitions become most clear when we approach business from an evolutionary perspective. Our questions must change. Instead of asking what product or service I can develop to make the most money, we're beginning to ask, what can I produce that liberates and informs and makes the world a better place, yet also preserves a delicate environmental balance? A new code of ethics is being added to the equation of free enterprise. We have to come awake wherever we are and ask, what are we creating, and does it consciously serve the overall purpose for which technology was invented in the first place, to make everyday subsistence easier, so that the prevailing orientation of life can shift from mere survival and comfort to the interchange of pure spiritual information? Each of us has to see that we have a part in the evolution toward lower and lower subsistence costs, until finally the basic means of survival is virtually free. We can move toward a truly enlightened capitalism if, instead of charging as much as the market will bear, we follow a new business ethic, based on lowering our prices a specified percentage as a conscious statement of where we want the economy to go. This would be the business equivalent of engaging in the ninth insight force of tithing. Charlene turned to face him, her face luminous. "I understand what you're saying. You mean, if all businesses reduce prices 10%, then everyone's cost of living, including the raw materials and supplies to the businesses themselves, will also go down." "That's right. Although some prices might go up temporarily, as everyone takes into account the true cost of waste disposal and other environmental effects. Overall, though, prices will systematically decline." "Doesn't this process already happen at times," I asked, "as a result of market forces?" "Of course," he replied, "but it can be accelerated if we do it consciously. Although, as the ninth insight predicts, this process will be greatly enhanced by the discovery of a very inexpensive energy source. It appears as if Feynman has done that. But the energy has to be made available in the most inexpensive way possible if it is to have its most liberating impact." As he spoke, he seemed to grow more inspired. Turning, he looked straight into my eyes. This is the economic idea I came here wanting to contribute, he said. I've never seen it so clearly. That's why I wanted to have the life experiences I've had. I wanted to be prepared for delivering this message. Do you really think enough people will reduce prices to make a difference? Maya asked. Especially if it takes money out of their own pockets. That seems to fly in the face of human nature. Curtis didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me, along with the others, as if I had the answer. For a moment, I was silent, feeling the energy shift. Curtis is right, I said finally. We'll do it anyway, even though we may give up some personal profit in the short run. None of this makes any sense at all until we grasp the 9th and 10th insights. If one believes that life is just a matter of personal survival in an essentially meaningless and unfriendly world, then it makes perfect sense to focus all one's wits on living as comfortably as possible and seeing to it that one's children have the same opportunities. But if one grasps the first 9 insights and sees life as a spiritual evolution with spiritual responsibilities, then our view completely changes. And once we begin to understand the 10th, then we see the birth process from the perspective of the afterlife, and we realize that we're all here to bring the earth dimension into alignment with the heavenly sphere. Besides, opportunity and success are very mysterious processes, and if we operate our economic life in the flow of the overall plan, we synchronistically meet all the other people who are doing the same thing. And suddenly, prosperity opens up for us. We'll do it, I continued. Because individually that's where the intuition and coincidences will take us. We'll remember more about our birth visions, and it will become clear that we intended to make a certain contribution to the world. And most important, we'll know that if we don't follow this intuition, not only will the magic coincidences and the sense of inspiration and aliveness stop, but eventually we may have to look at our actions in an afterlife review. We'll have to face our failure. I stopped abruptly, noticing that Charlene and Maya were both staring wide-eyed at the space behind me. Reflexively, I turned around. There was the hazy outline of my own soul group, dozens of individuals fading into the distance, again as though the walls of the cave weren't there. What are all of you looking at? Curtis asked. It's his soul group, Charlene said. I saw these groups when I was at the falls. I've seen a group behind both Maya and Curtis, I said. Maya twisted around and looked at the space behind her. The group there flickered once, then came fully into focus. Maya continued to stare, obviously seeing all of the groups. They're helping us, aren't they? They can give us the vision we're looking for. As soon as she made that comment, all of the groups moved away from us dramatically and became less clear. What happened? Maya asked. It's your expectation, I said. If you look to them for your energy, as a replacement for your own inner connection to divine energy, they leave. They won't allow a dependence. The same thing happened to me. Charlene gave me a nod of agreement. It happened to me too. They're like family. We're connected to them in thought, but we have to sustain our own connection with the divine source beyond them before we can link to them and pick up on what they know, which is really your own higher memory. They hold the memory for us, Maya asked. Yes, Charlene replied, looking directly at me. She started to say something else, then stopped herself, appearing to drift off in thought. Then she said, I'm beginning to understand what I saw in the other dimension. In the afterlife, each of us comes from a particular soul group, and these groups each have a particular angle or truth to offer the rest of humanity. She glanced at me. For instance, you come from a group of facilitators. Do you know that? Souls that help evolve our philosophical understanding of what life is about. Everyone who belongs to this particular soul group is always trying to find the best and most comprehensive way of describing spiritual reality. You struggle with complex information, And because you're so dense, you keep pushing and exploring until you find a way to express it clearly. I looked at her askance, which made her burst out laughing. It's a gift you have, she said reassuringly. Turning to Maya, she said, and you, Maya, your soul group is oriented toward health and well-being. They think of themselves as solidifiers of the physical dimension, keeping our cells operating optimally and full of energy, tracing and removing emotional blocks before they manifest in disease. Curtis's group is about transforming the use of technology, as well as our overall understanding of commerce. Throughout human history, this group has been working to spiritualize our concepts of money and capitalism, to find the ideal conceptualization. She paused, and I could already see an image of light flickering behind her. What about you, Charlene? I asked. What is your group doing? We're journalists, researchers, she replied, working to help people appreciate and learn from each other. What journalism is really all about is looking deeply at the life and beliefs of the people and organizations we cover, at their true substance and higher expression, just the way we're looking at each other now. I again remembered my conversation with Joel, specifically his jaded cynicism. It's hard to see journalists doing that, I said. We're not, she replied. Not yet. But this is the ideal toward which the profession is evolving. This is our true destiny, once we become more secure and break free from the old worldview in which we need to win and bring energy and status our way. It makes perfect sense why I wanted to be born to my family. They were all so inquisitive. I picked up on their excitement, their need for information. That's why I was a reporter for so long, and then joined the research firm. I wanted to help work out the ethics of reporting, and then come together with all of. She drifted away again, staring at the floor of the cave. Then her eyes widened, and she said, I know how we're bringing in the world vision, as we remember our birth visions and integrate them together as a group. We merge the power of our relative soul groups in the other dimension, which helps us remember even more. So we finally get to the overall vision of the world. We all stared at her, puzzled. Look at the whole picture, she explained. Each person on Earth belongs to a soul group, and these soul groups represent the various occupational groups that exist on the planet: medical people, lawyers, accountants, computer workers, farmers, every field of human endeavor. Once people find their right work, the job that really fits them, then they are working with other members of their soul group. As each of us wakes up and begins to remember our birth vision, why we're here, the occupational groups to which we belong come more into alignment with the members of our groups in the other dimension. As this happens, each occupational group on Earth moves toward its true soul purpose, its role of service in human society. We all continue to be spellbound. It's like with you, us journalists, she continued. Throughout history, we have been the individuals most inquisitive about what others in the culture were doing. And then a few centuries ago, we became conscious enough of ourselves to form a defined occupation. Since then, we've been busy broadening our use of the media, reaching more and more people with our newscasts, that sort of thing. But like everyone else, we suffered from insecurity. We felt that to get attention and energy from the rest of humanity, we had to create increasingly more sensational stories, thinking that only negativity and violence sell. But that's not our true role. Our spiritual role is to deepen and spiritualize our perception of other people. We see and then communicate what the various soul groups and individuals within these groups are doing and what they stand for, making it easier for everyone to learn the truth others provide. It's the same for every occupational group. We're all awakening to our true message and purpose. And as this happens all over the planet, we're then able to go further. We can form close spiritual associations with people outside of our particular soul group, just the way we're doing here. We all shared our birth visions and raised our vibration together, and that transforms not only human society but the culture in the afterlife as well. First, each of our soul groups comes closer into vibration with us on Earth, and we with them, the two dimensions opening into each other. Because of this closure, we can begin to have communication between the dimensions. We are able to see souls in the afterlife and pick up on their knowledge and memory more readily. That's happening with increasing frequency on the Earth. As Charlene was speaking, I noticed the soul groups behind each of us widening and spreading out until each touched the others, forming a continuous circle around us. The convergence seemed to jolt me into an even higher awareness. Charlene seemed to feel it too. She took a breath and then with emphasis continued. The other thing that happens in the afterlife is that the groups themselves come closer into resonance with each other. That's why the Earth is the primary focus of the souls in heaven. They can't unite on their own. Over there, many soul groups remain fragmented and out of resonance with each other because they live in an imaginary world of ideas that manifest instantly and disappears just as quickly, so reality is always arbitrary. There is no natural world, no atomic structure, as we have here, that serves as a stable platform, a background stage that is common to all of us. We affect what happens on this stage, but ideas manifest much more slowly, and we must reach some agreement on what we want to happen in the future. It's this agreement, this consensus, this unity of vision on the Earth, that also pulls the soul groups together in the afterlife dimension. That's why the Earth dimension is deemed so important. The physical dimension is where the true unification of souls is taking place. And it's this unification that's behind the long historical journey that humans have been taking. The soul groups in the afterlife understand the world vision, the vision of how the physical world can evolve and the dimensions can close. But this can only be accomplished by individuals who are born into the physical, one at a time, hoping to move the consensus Earth reality in that direction. The physical arena is the theater upon which evolution has been playing out for both dimensions, and now we're bringing it all into culmination as we remember consciously what's going on. She pointed to us, with a sweeping motion of her finger. This is the awareness that we're remembering together, right now. And it's the awareness that other groups, just like us, are remembering all over the planet. We all have a piece of the complete vision, and when we share what we know and unify our soul groups, then we're ready to bring the whole picture into consciousness. Suddenly, Charlene was interrupted by a slight tremor that ran through the earth under the cave. Specks of dust fell from the ceiling. Simultaneously, we heard the hum again, but this time the dissonance had disappeared. It sounded almost harmonious. "Oh God," Curtis said. "They almost have the calibrations right. We have to go back to the bunker." He made a movement to get up, as the energy level of the group plummeted. "Wait," I said. "What are we going to do there?" "We agreed that we would wait here until dark. There's still hours of daylight out there. I say we stay here. We achieved a high level of energy, but we haven't moved through the rest of the process yet. We seem to have cleared our residual emotions and amplified our energy and shared our birth visions, but we haven't seen the world vision yet. I think we can do more if we remain where it's safe and try to go further." Even as I spoke, I saw an image of all of us back in the valley again, together in the darkness. "It's too late for that," Curtis said. "They're ready to complete the experiment. If anything can be done, we've got to go there and do it now." Looked hard at him. "You said they were probably going to kill Charlene. If we're caught, they'll do the same to us." Maya held her head in her hands, and Curtis looked away, trying to shake off the panic. "Well, I'm going," Curtis said. Charlene leaned forward. "I think we should stay together. For an instant. I saw her in Native American clothing. Again in the virgin woods of the 19th century. The image quickly faded. Maya stood up. Charlene is right, she said. We have to stay together, and it might help if we can see what they're doing. I looked out through the cave's entrance, a long, deep-seated reluctance rising in my gut. What are we going to do with this? Operative, outside. We'll drag him into the cave and leave him here, Curtis said. We'll send someone for him in the morning, if we can. I met eyes with Charlene, then nodded agreement.